A resolution.
The Honourable Mary Ann Street.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I rise to take a call on this bill yet again. Mr. Chairman, it is a shame that this situation has been allowed to get to the point of validating legislation. When it was first introduced to the House, it was clear that nobody was particularly happy about it, but that the Minister had decided that this was the way to correct the inappropriate purpose for which the board extracted a levy from its members. Mr. Chairman, this does go back a long way, and it is entirely true that the Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drainlayers board has been problematic for a long time. And I would suggest that, in fact, instead of passing this legislation, that it would be good for the government to go back, as we did when we were in government, and look at the whole membership and performance of that board again. We did that once because they were behaving in ways that were particularly disreputable, and they were denying perfectly competent young tradespeople the chance to get a ticket. In a sense, they were gaming the labour market by making themselves rare. And that was inappropriate, and besides which, there was all kinds of behaviour from the board at that time which I have never seen in an industry association before or since. But the Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drainlayers board is not out of the woods yet. There is another alternative, Mr. Chair, and so I'm talking about part one because this is one possibility. The extension of the purposes for which the board may impose the levy. So they imposed a levy which they were not entitled to impose for reasons which are defensible, in that they wanted to clean the industry out of cowboys. Unfortunately, they have now had the reverse effect. We have plumbers and drainlayers and gas fitters who now have their licences, are able to practice but will not pay the registration because this board has increased it substantially and treated them with disdain. That, in legalising the purpose for extracting this disciplinary levy, which the law did not give the board the right to do, funds have been amassed that, in my view, ought to be repaid. And so another possibility, other than part one, Mr. Chairman, is to arrive at an accommodation with the disgruntled plumbers, gas fitters and drainlayers and say, all right, we'll come to some arrangement where some of the levy that you have paid that we extracted from you illegally will be refunded. And that is why we have submitted a supplementary order paper which seeks to enact the recommendation of the Ombudsman's Office that a proportion, not even the whole lot, but a proportion of those levies and fees, but the levy in particular, that were extracted unlawfully should be repaid to the members of the Federation, the Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drainlayers Federation. So our SOP provides that the retrospective validation component of the bill, which is this part one, would only be effective after a percentage of those levies and fees is repaid in accordance with terms specified in an order in council made under section 172. And that would address some of the concerns that the plumbers, gasfitters and drainlayers have over this issue. But the effect on the industry, Mr.
The
Chairman...
Honourable Marianne Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The effect on the industry, because of the board's behaviour, is really profound. And we are now seeing perfectly well qualified tradespeople relegating themselves to the category of cowboy because they do, that is by virtue of being unregistered, because they do not wish to pay fees to a board that misappropriates them or that extracts them unlawfully. The only remedy the board has ever entertained has been retrospective validating legislation, and that's what's in front of us in part one. That is not the only alternative, and I would ask the Minister to consider Labour's SOP and consider supporting that in order for this industry to be mended somewhat. I personally think there probably needs to be another clean-out entirely of the PGD board, but I would rather that the Minister acted in that way and had a close look at the actions of the PGD board instead of simply going with their request to make legal what they did illegally. I understand the disgruntlement of these men. George Clarkson comes up to me on a regular basis in the Nelson Market on Saturdays, and he is so wound up about this that, and he's not alone, that I find it difficult to say anything to him other than, I agree, George, it needs to be started over. It needs to be done again. But this legislation is not going to be the answer. The legislation as it stood, I think, was perfectly okay. I don't think there was anything wrong with the legislation. The PGD board has in fact stepped out of line with the legislation, done something which everybody who has been asked to pass judgment on their action has found to be illegal, from the Ombudsman to the Regulations Review Committee and onwards. And that isn't going to be this piece of legislation is not going to appease the plumbers, gasfitters and drainlayers who feel not only hard done by but led inappropriately in their industries. So the numbers the member, the Honourable Annette King, was quoting a moment ago are seriously scary. And so in the space of 10 years, when there used to be one drain layer per 939 people, we've now got one drain layer per 2,471 people, and the population hasn't increased that much. And I use drain layers in particular in this instance because they were under the administration of health because of their impact on the health of communities. They lay the sewers. They put down the wastewater pipes. These are the people who connect up all the services that are required for us not to all be dying of E. coli and the plague and anything else that might be carried by wastewater and through sewers. So they were always under health previously. They are important. And we will need them. Christchurch will need them. Christchurch needs them now. And yet somehow, overall, we now have 761 fewer certifying drain layers than we did in 2012. So this behaviour of the PGD board is causing the industry to diminish for two reasons. One is they behave badly towards them and will not apologise for doing things that are illegal. And secondly, they whack up the charges on them, and so it costs far more to register as a qualified and licensed tradesperson in New Zealand than it does in Australia. So is it any wonder that our young tradespeople are being driven offshore, being driven to Australia, where the prospects are brighter and their work is respected.
Colleen
Thank you, Mr.
McKelvey.
Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given what we've listened to in the last half hour,